Good morning. My name is Ryan Erickson Kulas. I'm Programs Director at Michelson Philanthropies. And I'm excited today to talk to you about the Michelson Philanthropies and Science Prize for Immunology. Next slide, please. So just a quick look at the agenda for today's conversation. First, I'll be giving an overview of Michelson Philanthropies. We'll then do an overview of the Science Prizes. We'll talk specifically about this prize for immunology. And then there will be a review of the application process, the evaluation criteria, the timeline, and then how you all can submit any questions that you have about this process. And I'll be joined later in the conversation by Seth Thomas Scanlon, who is the immunology editor at Science, and who will be discussing more about sort of the application process. Next slide. Michelson Philanthropies is founded and funded by Dr. Gary K. Michelson. Dr. Michelson is an orthopedic spinal surgeon who actually made his fortune in inventing medical devices and then patenting those devices. He has nearly 1,000 patents. Since amassing his fortune, Dr. Michelson has retired from medicine and has now devoted himself entirely to philanthropy. He operates a variety of different foundations, which I will touch on briefly in a bit. And he's also a signer of the Giving Pledge, pledging to give away his fortune through philanthropic endeavors. And so I'm actually going to turn it over to Dr. Michelson right now, who will give us a welcome introduction and talk a bit more about his vision for this particular prize.
Good morning. I am Dr. Gary Michelson. And what is actually immunology now needs to be written quite large and should be seen to have many entrance points. Big data, AI, and deep machine learning provide the opportunity to discern meaning and relationships from what would otherwise appear to be an impenetrable torrent of random information. Proteomics and de novo protein engineering, beyond the once incredible breakthrough of being able to synthesize naturally occurring proteins, now in hand are the tools and the ability to create functional, purpose-driven proteins that are biologically active. The microbiome, thousands of different bacteria living within us and each biologically active in their own right. Merely by way of example one, Akkermansia muciniphila can alter the permeability of the gut wall, modulate body weight, alter glucose levels in diabetics, and affect the permeability of blood vessels in the brain. In a land of plenty, obesity is now the #1 health threat and killer in our country, rising in just the past 20 years alone from 30 to now more than 40% of the adult population. And none of us needs a scientific study to know that the old standard carbohydrate insulin metabolism theory of body weight dynamics, or the still simpler explanation of calories in and calories out, have proven to be inadequate, inaccurate, and less than helpful. Yes, the situation appears to be far more nuanced, with substances signaling both hunger and satiety. And now, most surprisingly, we find that it is our own immune systems that turn out to be the little man behind the curtain. But perhaps your interest is why any of us ever grows old, wears out, and dies. Nobel Prize winner for her work on telomeres, Liz Blackburn says that it is accumulated chronic inflammation. And of course, what we call inflammation is just a workhorse of the immune system. And while we have long recognized the role of our immune systems in fighting off and protecting us from infections, the ability of these systems to identify and destroy our own aberrant cells has now advanced to the point where immunotherapy has become nearly synonymous with cancer therapy. So it has now become more than apparent that the human immune system is involved in almost all human disease. The point of this, whatever your area of research, and regardless of the nominal field of study, if it relates to the immune system, and almost all medical research does, we are interested in you. The second point is that history has shown that the intersection of knowledge, brilliance, imagination, daring, and perseverance most frequently occurs before the age of 35. Hence, these prizes are directed to that group. The third point is that the present funding algorithms, such as are in use in NIH, favor incremental research over potentially more promising but high-risk, high-return research. We are with the snowboarders who say, go big or go home. Actually, if you never fail, then you're just not trying hard enough. And as for that, I'm not sure that not succeeding is actually failing unless that is where you give up. And finally, what is the actual purpose of these prizes? First, to recognize and distinguish brilliant and imaginative young researchers. And secondly, in doing so, to accelerate the trajectory of their careers. I personally would like to thank the American Association for the Advancement of Science for their incredible efforts in supporting these prizes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michelson. As I mentioned, Dr. Michelson has devoted himself to philanthropy and making our world a better and more just place. And he does that through an umbrella network known as Michelson Philanthropies. Michelson Philanthropies is a network of private operating foundations that seek to make transformational change within our society, particularly for those that are most vulnerable or communities that have been previously underserved. And Michelson Philanthropies really reflects the passion and interests of both Dr. Michelson as well as his wife, Alia. Next slide, please. So I'm going to briefly touch on some of the foundations within the network of Michelson Philanthropies so that you all have a better sense of the work that we do. Obviously, today we're here talking about the Michelson Medical Research Foundation, which is looking to support researchers that are making therapies available to patients around the world. Dr. Michelson has also founded an animal welfare organization known as Michelson Found Animals. Both Dr. Michelson and his wife are very passionate about animal welfare. And so this organization, based in Los Angeles, serves both pets as well as people, regardless of socioeconomic status, to better the lives of those animals. They operate a range of different projects, including research, community partnerships, impact investing. They also operate one of the largest microchip registries for animals around the country. And in fact, my own dog is part of that microchip registry. Next slide, please. The other organizations that I'll briefly touch on are the Michelson 20 Million Minds Foundation and the Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property. 20MM is Dr. Michelson's foundation focused on higher education. They work to make higher education more affordable and allow students to be more successful. And they do that through a variety of different initiatives, including openly licensed textbooks to eliminate the high cost and barrier of instructional materials that students often face. We have an initiative devoted to student basic needs. We also look at the intersection of the criminal justice system and the higher education system and look to bring educational opportunities to those that are either currently or formerly incarcerated. And lastly, 20MM looks to address the digital divide, which is impacting students as well as our society at large. The Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property really gets its momentum from Dr. Michelson's background. As I shared, Dr. Michelson made his fortune in inventing and then patenting those inventions. And so the Institute for Intellectual Property is all about bringing IP education to the masses and democratizing it. Dr. Michelson is very passionate about providing IP education to inventors, students, and entrepreneurs so that they can capitalize on their IP similar to how he did. There's an entire curriculum built up that schools, nonprofits can utilize as they're looking to spread IP awareness. Next slide, please. So today we're going to be talking about the Michelson Prizes, and particularly the one focused on immunology. Next slide. So the Michelson Prizes are really focused on awarding and supporting research that is highly innovative and highly impactful. It's focused on immunology, vaccine, and immunotherapy discovery. However, we do encourage applicants from a full spectrum of disciplines to apply for these prizes. Next slide. One of the prizes that we've offered is the Michelson Next Gen or Next Generation Prize. This was launched in 2017 in partnership with the Human Vaccines Project, and it really seeks to reward young investigators who are looking to disrupt the current system. As you can see, Danica Hill, based in Melbourne, Australia, was last year's prize winner in her work to exploiting T follicular helper cells as an innovative tool to discover targets for long-lived humoral immunity. Next slide. One of the things that we are particularly excited about with this prize is being able to work with a great organization like Science. This is just a sample of some of the prizes that are awarded under the Science umbrella. And we're really excited to have the Michelson and Science Immunology Prize join this group of prestigious awards. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bill Moran, who's the publisher of Science and can touch a little bit more on Science's excitement for this work.
Hello, this is Bill Moran. I am the publisher for Science and the Science family of journals. I have the pleasure of being here today to say a few words about our new prize. Our new prize is the Michelson Philanthropies and Science Prize for Immunology. In particular, why the prize? Our prize is developed because both organizations, the Michelson Philanthropies and the American Association for the Advancement of Science, which is also the publisher of science journals, came together in partnership because we both feel that it is important to support and recognize early career researchers. And in particular, early career researchers in areas such as basic research, immunology, and vaccines. And that's why we have developed this prize. And I'd like to extend an invitation for those of you who are eligible for this prize to submit an application. I won't take up too much more of your time, and I will say I hope you enjoyed today's webinar, and thank you for the opportunity to announce the prize. Goodbye.
Thanks so much, Bill. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Seth Thomas Scanlon, who is the immunology editor at Science, who's going to walk us through some of the specifics on the prize, eligibility, how to apply, et cetera. Seth?
Thank you, Ryan. Yes, we're very excited at Science to be able to partner with Michelson Philanthropies to announce the sort of inaugural year of the prize. Next slide. So the overview of the prize, this prize will focus on transformative research in immunology that's been conducted over the past 3 years that has trans-disease applications to accelerate either vaccine or immunotherapy discovery. And this international prize is intended to encourage and support young investigators from a wide range of disciplines, which include but are not limited to things like computer science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, protein engineering, nanotech, genomics, parasitology, neurodegenerative diseases, and gene editing. who apply their expertise in these topics to perform research that has a lasting impact on vaccines and immunotherapy. Next slide. So the prize will be awarded annually. This will be the first year, and it will include one $30,000 grand prize and two $10,000 runner-up awards. In addition to the monetary prize, the grand prize winner will be published, his or her essay will be published in Science and in print, and the runners-up will be in online. The winners will also be invited to an award ceremony, and travel and accommodation will be provided. And they will also receive a digital subscription to Science, I think 5 years. Next slide. So a few of the rules for eligibility. So the applicants have to be no older than 35 and have to hold either an MD, PhD, or MD, PhD at the time of entry. The entrance essay must describe contributions to human immunology research based on their field of study. As it says here, the entrant must have performed or directed this work that is described in the essay. The research, as I stated earlier, has to have been performed over the past 3 years, during the past 3 years. And finally, if you're an employee of Michelson Philanthropies, its subsidiary Science or AAAS, as well as the relatives, unfortunately, they're not eligible for this prize. Next slide. So how it will actually work is that Science editors will first screen the essays, and then after the finalists are selected, a committee that will be chaired by me, and including both in-house Science editors and external judges, will select the winners. And our decision would be made by the end of the year, so December, January of this coming year. Essays are going to be rated on 2 characteristics, as they are for almost all the Science Partnership Prizes. 1, scientific quality and significance. So a high score here would indicate that the results that the applicant describes in their essay are particularly important in moving the field forward and or radically change the field's understanding of an important biological phenomena. And secondly, just as important, clarity and style of writing. So the work should be presented in a compelling way that conveys the basic logic of the experiment and the overall significance of this work. The best essays will employ an engaging writing style that is accessible to a broad scientific audience. We want you to be able to convey your enthusiasm for the work that you have spent many long hours working on. Next slide. So submission to submit, most of the details are provided at this website, so sciencemag.org/Michelson. Next slide. The nitty gritty. So to complete your submission, you need a completed entry form. You need an essay. That's sort of the major crux of the application. It has to be no longer than 1,000 words and describe, as we stated earlier, current research that heavily impacts the field of human immunology with trans disease applications. You will also need a 1-page letter of recommendation from either your advisor, supervisor, or a senior colleague who's familiar with your work. You will also need to submit a CV, and that will include full citations of the papers that you have published that are referred to in the essay, any academic or professional awards, and of course, relevant professional experience. You will also need to supply copies of 2 of the papers that are most relevant to the essay that you write. And finally, these items will need to be submitted through the prize management system, which you can access through the website. Next slide. So key dates, so May 15th, about a month ago, the application portal opened and applications close in October. I would urge you to, if you're interested, to start working now, because the best papers are not written overnight, as are the best essays. You need to really take some time, edit, perhaps let some colleagues or friends who are maybe slightly outside of your field see the work, and then they can give you feedback. But October 1st is when the application portal closes. And then at the end of the year, we'll have selected the finalists, and then we'll have a meeting of the jury. And probably in January, late December, January, we'll have made the decision, and then February, the winners will be announced. And then I believe there will be some award ceremony sometime in the spring. Next slide. So the prize committee, as I said, will include me, as well as at least one other science editor and 3 external judges to be determined. But they will be scientists, leading immunologists in the field. Next slide. Okay, I'll take it back, Ryan. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Seth. Really appreciate that. And really appreciate everyone who has been viewing this webinar. Hopefully it's been helpful in walking you through what we are looking for in prize applicants, as well as how that process operates. If there are any remaining questions that you have that would be helpful to get answers from, you can email us at AAAS.org. That's michelsonprize@AAAS.org. And your questions will be answered via email. Thank you again for viewing this webinar, and we look forward to reviewing your proposals. Hope everyone has a great day. Goodbye.